Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Good to everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. As you know, I think this is probably number 61 or 62. I've lost count. And Tane, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. The weather's turned back to the worst, I think, but I'm hoping and holding out that we've got rid of those wet couple of days, and that we can move back into some sun.
Awesome, cool. And what have you put into your basket of knowledge since we last spoke?
I think what I've taken away, I've started getting back into reading now that it's summer. I have a bit more downtime to, start picking up listening to podcasts and reading and some other hobbies I want to start. And so I've started reading Atomic Habits, and I guess from the first 30 pages that I've read so far, I guess it changed my mindset about it's all about talking about instead of setting these goals and having these end goals, looking at the systems and the protocols you put in place to get to those goals. And I think that was quite good for reimagining how I'm looking at running at the moment. I think after getting into doing high Ks and 15 or 20K runs and trying to set a fast pace, I think it's just physically drained me, as well as getting back into the gym has meant that I've stopped that passion for it. And so I think, instead of always setting those goals of, okay, I want to be running 5-minute Ks, instead reimagining it and going, okay, I'm going to just go for a run, or, set a distance but not a pace, and really see where that takes me.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great learning, because I think that's going to come into our conversation today with our guest. Atomic Habits, fantastic book, James Clear, habit stacking. If you haven't read that or heard of it, fantastic wee book. And I guess my learning since we last spoke is, at the moment I'm doing a mental health first aid course, and I've done one before, but this one's been really interesting because it just speaks about the difference between mental health and mental illness. And there's a big stigma around the word mental. Since you go with the word mental, people go, as opposed to going, okay, cool, mental, what's the word next? We all go through it. Every one of us has mental health. It's just a spectrum of where we are, and then it changes when we talk about mental illness. And some of the stats that were being thrown about this morning were just pretty crazy, speaking about young men in New Zealand, Maori Pacifica, and also just the narrative around that is pretty crazy. So it's just great awareness about how we move forward, but also how we don't move forward in certain spaces. So it's pretty. These are things that we know, but also the impact and the role of media in how they portray things. For example, one thing that they spoke about today. We speak about suicide and mental health, which is anybody that is passed away through suicide is a loss. But they also speak about how many lives are saved, which we always forget about the narrative. And according to the facilitator today, over 22,000 lives are saved. So it's a narrative that we have to talk about as well. It's important to realize that, but also important to realize why people get to that stage where they think that's the way they want to pass away or in their lives. Yeah, so that's a pretty somber topic right there, but hey, that's what I learned. But hey, enough about what we've learned, Tane and myself. For our listeners out there, our regular listeners there, you know that we scour the country, around the world, to pick up people and talk to people that we think are pretty amazing. Everyone's amazing. And our guest today, we think, is another fantastic human being, and we'd love to share his story with you. Welcome to the podcast, George.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, fantastic,
Awesome.
George. Brilliant. So, George, for our listeners out there, tell us about who you are, just where you are at this moment in time, and then we'll get into your story.
I'm currently looking over, I'm back home in Blenheim at the moment, looking out over the garden. I'm second year at the University of Canterbury, doing a double degree, so a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and Sports Science, and a BCom in Supply Chain Management and HR. And yeah, that's sort of my journey so far. I went to Mob Boys College for all of my high school, and Marlborough, born and raised.
Fantastic, brilliant.
Yeah.
So George, if I when I met 18-year-old George all those years ago, and I said to George, hey, in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, you're going to be doing a double degree with the areas you've specialized in, would you reckon, yep, this is what I've been doing, or would you be like, actually, no, I'm still figuring out what I want to do?
Well, I've only just now figured out sort of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. I think that's a better way I think to go about it, I've had a lot more enjoyment out of it rather than going straight in and going, right, this is sort of what I want to study, this is where I'm going to go, this is where I'm going to end up, and I've sort of let the journey ebb and flow.
Oh, brilliant. But when you started your journey, where did you start your journey? What is the first thing when you left Marble Boys? What are you looking at doing?
I'm not too sure actually. I think I was just like, right, I'm heading down to Christchurch. I'm gonna, you know, we ended up meeting. There was a group of us after a night in the town. I think this was about a quarter way into the year, and we sort of wanted to faff about a bit and have a bit of fun. So we ended up running a backyard cricket tournament across 24 hours. So we ended up playing backyard cricket for 24 hours and running a marathon between the wickets, and raised $45,000 for I'm Hope. And I think that's like doing stuff outside of uni has always been my bread and butter.
Yeah.
And making those connections by not providing a service, but trying to just get people involved in what might interest them outside of their studies. That's sort of what I like.
Oh, brilliant. We'll come back to that because that's a big part of your life at the moment. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's talk about you. So you born and bred in Marlborough, as you said, and you finished up high school there. You now have a choice of going to any tertiary provider in New Zealand, and for our listeners out there, Marlborough is basically wine country. It has got some amazing wineries, and a lot of people choose to stay and work in the vineyards, because it's just a natural progression. So you have that on your doorstep. You have all the different providers. What made you choose and want to leave Marlborough for a little bit to go into some study?
I needed to get out of Marlborough, to be fair.
Yep.
Like New Zealand, it's pretty small. That was really my main motivation. I think I didn't really want to become trapped per se, or that paralysis by analysis type thing.
Yep.
So I think it was just better to head almost blindly and just go, right, I'm going to throw a dart at a map and I'm going to head there for a bit, see how it's like, and then move around.
Oh, brilliant. And your dart landed in Christchurch. Happy days. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about so you spoke about I Am Hope. What has got you into that whole mental health and wellness and awareness sphere?
I think year 12, when boys are about 16, 17, I think I saw a lot of, I don't know, I think that's the year that blokes are most likely to sort of lose themselves a wee bit and not know where they want to go, and sort of get quite anxious over that and end up going either, hey, I've got no idea, or this is the only thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to tunnel vision, and this is going to be, and I'm not going to see anything else outside of it. So it ended up sort of being, you have your mates going through their tough times. You've got, you might have a really bad day, which might turn into a bad week. And then I was like, okay, what can I do to help this? So obviously, me being 16 at the time, nothing, to be fair, apart from just being a good mate. However, I had a wee look at Gumboot Friday. So Gumboot Friday obviously provides free mental health counselling for all NZ youth, which is just awesome. So with that, I was like, okay, surely I can do something to help these guys out and raise some funds. I had no idea what. And then we have a great foundation here in Marlborough and also in Christchurch. It's called the Inspire Foundation, and they'll put on a talk. They'll give grants to youth who are going over to the States for uni or community service, anything. So William Trubridge was speaking at this seminar event that they had, and he talked about how he had swam underneath the Cook Strait. So he spent more time below the water than above the water, and did it, I believe it was around 800 breaths. So he started out in a monofin, like a mermaid, swimming under, and then changed to just normal flippers. And I was like, okay, here's an amazing bloke that's taken his own twist on something that's already quite challenging.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I don't trust myself to do the Cook Strait enough. What's on my doorstep? And that was sort of the Marlborough Sounds. And previously I'd been a swimmer for about 8 years. Not that good, not that fast at all. Went to all your competitions right up to age group level and nearly opens. Didn't quite make it, but not fast enough. So I was like, okay, I've got this skill here, and I've got these people around me at this time where I can sort of make this difference in either races or funds or whatever. So we ended up swimming 123 kilometres across 10 days in the Marlborough Sounds, from the 30th of December 2019 to the 8th of January 2020. So yeah.
Oh wow! And was it just you by yourself, or did you have a crew that was, hey, let's do this together?
So we had a couple of sport swimmers some days, a couple of kayakers. We've got an amazing sort of multi-sport culture here in Marlborough. Awesome people that regularly do, your God zones, your exteriors, that type of thing. Yeah. So we ended up staying on a boat for 10 days across the entire mission, and just had some fun. And we ended up raising $64,000 for I'm Hope, which is just incredible.
That's amazing. And let's go back to the moment there. What was the reaction when you told your peers or your family, hey, we're going to be doing this?
I remember I sat in it. I sat in the presentation, and midway through it, I texted mum and dad, and they're like, okay, chat went home, which is fair enough. So it wasn't like, people can't, obviously not, you can't put this recording on there, but like, they're like, a bit taken back. So, and then from there, they're like, okay, break it down. What do you need? Okay, we can help you with this. You need to sort this by yourself. So definitely not saying no, but just being constructive criticism and going, have you thought about this? You might need to talk to this person and that type of thing. So very supportive.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So when about the year was that? So you said you started at the end of the year. When did this light bulb moment happen?
May, I believe. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And then how did you start your training for that? So obviously it's not just training, it's also the getting all the support crew ready for that and your fundraising. And this is you as a 16-year-old, right? This is you as a 16-year-old young man. Yeah.
So luckily I've got an amazing younger sister. So I've got 3 younger sisters. At the moment, one's 17, 16, 14. So at that age, Molly was 15, 14, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, she's the manager. She gets all the ducks in a row. Honestly, she's a straight line. So she was sort of in charge of getting all the kayakers and all the support crew ready, and I was in charge of just following a black line in the pool and getting out over summer in the ocean. So I was quite fit just from training regularly, but it was stepping up those Ks. You'd be swimming 10K a day, either in the pool or the ocean, and then gymming at night, and just eating like an absolute cow afterwards. So you're nailing back 4,000, 5,000 calories a day, and just prepping this, your body.
Oh, brilliant! So you have I guess you have about 8 months to get yourself less than that there to get prepped. Can you remember the day? That end of the year when you were like, right, cool, this is it. How did you feel?
On the 30th.
Yeah.
Before starting. It was sort of all a dream up until that point, to be fair, and then a sort of another dream took over. It's like when you're having a really good dream and you wake up and then you go back to sleep again. And I'd say on the 30th, that was the point where I sort of woke up and I was like, right, okay. And then I put my head back down. So I didn't really allow myself much time to go, hey, this is where I am. This is what's going to happen. And I let other people sort of guide me in that sense. Brilliant. So that team, and that relieved a lot of stress on my behalf, because all I needed to do was just focus on putting my left arm forward, my right arm forward, and kicking. So the importance of having that awesome crew around you is just nuts, and that goes for, of course, anything.
I can imagine. Yeah. It's always good to have an idea, but if you don't have the support, the idea sometimes doesn't become reality, and it doesn't have an impact. Yeah. So you finished the swim. What does it feel like? The day you and your crew just finished that massive undertaking.
It was quite surreal. I probably didn't take it in enough. My social battery drains quite quickly, to be fair. So I was like, all these people at the end of it, they're like, woo, cool, awesome. And then I was like, right, I want to go back on the boat and sleep and just eat. So,
Yeah.
going back into your hole, and then afterwards, of course, came back out and thanked everyone. So,
Yeah.
seeing everyone on the Anakiwa jetty was quite, you swim the side and everyone's, waving or whatever, and it's pretty cool seeing that community show up for you, especially here in Marlborough, which is quite a tight community, especially around the Sounds as well.
Yeah.
Everybody goes out there on their boats for holiday, and we timed it perfectly. So, families would go out, they'd go for a fish, and then they'd come back and they'd hang with us for about 2 hours or so in the afternoon if they wanted to.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
it was really cool.
Oh, awesome. That's pretty magical. And I guess so there's the impact of that. But what is the impact for you as you now gave this money to the Gumboot Friday? Because that would have been a whole different reaction for you
Yeah.
as well.
I think I'm not very good at maths, sorry, but 64,000 divided by 120 is the number of counselling sessions that were provided.
Yeah.
So I think especially giving it to that cause is quite cool, and sorting, you're providing this amounts of service to your peers around the country, so they're able to take care of themselves.
That's 533 people, 533 sessions, which is amazing.
Yeah. So they're 120 per session, but in comparison, the government is, I think, 480.
Wow.
For an hour-long session. So, yeah, I think that also spoke to it as well, because it was the amount of money, but knowing that would go further than how stuff is already being allocated as well. So it was
wow.
quite
I mean,
as well.
so that's an awesome share, because I think this is going to open up another bit of a conversation. So
Mm.
you do that. This is what you're doing, but let's talk about the learning of the mental health system in New Zealand, because obviously that now becomes a part of your journey. You go, what I'm actually fundraising for. What is the biggest thing that you mentioned now, 480 versus 120? Crazy. What are the startling things that you go, whoa, wait a minute, this is unreal? Or
I definitely, your stat before you brought up around the amount of lives saved is nuts. Because it was 580 odd last year, but I want to say it was almost 3,000 that were saved. And I think when people complain about the system not working, 100%, that's absolutely fine. I agree. But it's when those people that are working for it get down, because God, they are amazing. They are just the most lovely people you'll ever meet. So I think in terms of that, a lot of focus needs to be drawn, instead of, the system's terrible, we need to fix it. The people on the inside working for it are amazing. What do they need to make their jobs or lives better, instead of from an external point of view? So I think that's sort of the way forward, and making and we just talk about systems all day, but like how at the end it's just humans, and how we can support each other better.
Yeah, totally. It comes down to resources, right? What the resources available for anyone that wants to try and do the best they can for any young person or any person that comes to see them. And
we've got this year, and we'll go into this later, I'm sure, but so Lads Without Labels has set up flat chats as an example. So two boys every week bring a huge, like what grandma used to make, a huge roast meal, or granddad, or whoever, family member, cool, huge roast meal into a boys' flat. They can sit down and they chew the fat. And those two boys going in, like the course you're going through at the moment, bystander response training, mental health first aid, that type of thing. And they're just having a yarn. And it's that peer-to-peer support, which here in NZ, we need to have a lot more education around, in terms of our peers, and just having that in friend groups and people being educated, and that alleviates a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's just a simple conversation, right? Which we take for granted, right? It's
exactly.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get into all this in a lot more detail as we go on. But I'm gonna just go timelinely. So you're a 16-year-old. You do this amazing feat for an amazing cause.
Mm-hmm.
You're now 17. So how do you go? Okay, I've now done this here. what's next for me? So you go back to school.
Yeah.
In your new year, you've accomplished things. You've still got to achieve your academic goals, whatever those are.
Yeah.
What's the next thing that comes to light? Because now, with your eyes being open with what you can do in terms of the mental health space, what is the next thing for you?
I got invited to go on the tractor trek as well. So Mike King and the I'm Hope team and the tractor trek team were, of course, Gore all the way to the top of the North Island. Unfortunately, I think we reached New Plymouth when it was called off due to COVID. Not good. But I was lucky enough to join them from Christchurch to Palmy. So we're in this huge, 7-ton Mercedes-Benz, just big Kiwi bank tractor, ploughing our way up the country. And, you get to pull into Parliament, talk to all the MPs and go, hey, look, give them some funds. They know what they're doing. They can sort it out, that type of thing. And I sort of meeting those people and that sort of, yeah. And at that time, I was just hunkering down almost, going back to, family, friends, school and just chilling out.
I actually remember that because I remember I was in New Plymouth when it was meant to come through, and I was getting excited to see it all, and then COVID hit, and the whole region was I think it came through, and the region was getting ready to go through it, and Walmart was happening, and it was all just crazy at the time, and then boom, I just remember that moment there, just everything just changed in an instant, basically, in an instant.
Yeah.
And what is that like? What is that like for you though? Because so you're on this trajectory of getting all this stuff going on here, but as you said before, you're also hunkering down, and then COVID happens. And how is that for you as a young person? Because as young men, those are the formative ages for us, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
And now you're taken away into isolation. What is that like? Isolation.
I think personally, I quite liked it.
Yeah.
To be fair, we had of course, we had boom drinks with the neighbours, so other sides of the road, that type of thing. I found a pulley in the garage and a bunch of dive weights, so I set up a home gym, went for runs. So, and of course you FaceTimed your mates and everything. So I think for people that are proactive, it was almost quite a cool way to chill out. But for those that may struggle while they're by themselves, it definitely wasn't a helping hand. And of course, that's when I'm Hope and all that crew put all the services online and went, hey, this is where you can access them. So, and coming out of that, I think out of all your lockdowns, especially, like I see it at the moment with all the younger university students in terms of maturity, and of course those older than me can probably see that in myself, but where that's affected people socially in terms of the speed people come out of lockdown at. And to be fair, I reckon we've done it too fast, but you've gone from 0 to 100, everybody wants to reconnect all of a sudden, and you've got this massive anxiety of everybody just being overwhelmed. So
yes, it's a tough one, right? Especially at that age that, I still reflect back and think about schools. And when I'm working in schools, I see young people that, especially this year's group, they've had so many lockdowns and so many disruptions that the anxiety within their own classmates is ridiculously high, and it's not their fault. It's just the expectation of things to return to normal.
100%.
And how do you go from 0, like you said, to 100?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And I guess there was no right or wrong way. Nobody knew everyone's just making it up as we go. So there's no criticism. It's just hindsight is amazing.
Exactly. Hindsight's such a curse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Tane, and let's talk about you, Tane. So, in the Taranaki, when you were at school as well, did you notice, because you came from a co-ed school, which is a little bit different? Did you notice, or were you aware of the mental health struggles with some of your friends or your classmates, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was kind of introduced to it a bit earlier. So I was introduced to it like year 7 and 8. Year 8 in particular, I had quite a close mate who started having these feelings, and then because of the struggles that he was going through, he was, pushing it out onto everybody else, and so it impacted the whole friend group, which was a huge struggle at the time. And I guess again, it comes down to that education, because I didn't know what it meant, what mental health meant, what being suicidal, being depressed, being anxious, all these feelings. I had no idea what it actually meant. And so that also took a toll on me, because I was trying to educate myself on what these actually meant so that I could understand how my friend was feeling, but also taking the brunt of my mate saying to me, that I was the issue in terms of causing these feelings, which again, when he reflected on that and got through it, he said, this was just a way of me feeling better within myself, because then I was placing it on an external factor, not an internal factor. But at the time, to face that in terms of getting blamed and getting accused of doing these things when I hadn't necessarily, as well as trying to educate myself, it was a very hard place to navigate. And I think it was hard because at the time, you're also going through puberty, you're also learning how to socialize and learning the values of yourself. So it was just this whole mix of everything kind of coming down at once. And I didn't really necessarily probably go through the right means of having support networks around me to go, hey, how can I navigate my way through this? I kind of just took it all in. And so, again, hindsight is a curse, and I would have loved to do things differently, but right there in the moment, it was just an overwhelming feeling of, okay, everything's hitting me at once, and I've got to try and, find my way back to the surface somehow.
And I guess it's hard, because awareness is really hard, especially when you're not introduced this at any point, when you're not educated, and also when you start the education. So, I guess the one thing that we learned today was, from what you know now, don't have regrets over what you didn't know in the past, because you didn't know. So you can't change that. So you got to think of what you have right now, and it's tough, right? When you think about that, like you said, George, hindsight is a curse. Never heard of that before, but that's a great saying. I'm gonna remember that. So George, let's come back to you. So you now finish up lockdown. You finishing up school. What is on your horizon then, as you were thinking about the space here, or I guess whatever space you were in at that time?
Yeah. I was just working on the vineyard.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I was just vineyard over summer, just chilling out, just having a good time with some mates here. But I think that was where I was sort of finding my feet in this space and going, hey, is this something I not necessarily want to pursue, but always sort of have on my, on my keychain, where I can, pull out and go, hey, do you need some help? Or, hey, we're going to do another challenge and raise some funds. So I think that was sort of, and of course, at this time, that first swim was sort of my goodbye to swimming.
Yeah.
So I hadn't really been swimming as much or had a structure to my day. But yeah.
Oh, great. So was this when you also thought about the backyard cricket? Was this time? Or was it later on when you thought about the backyard cricket?
So backyard cricket was in May last year.
Okay. All right. Cool.
So
we'll come back in a second.
You start what's that, second term, first year uni. And again, not out on the town, we all sort of sat down in my room, probably pissed as chooks, but and just went, hey, we can do something, and in this crazy rant, we can do something, we can sort something out. Okay, let's do this. And we ran with it. And yeah, it just brought the entire hall together. So we had it in basically the middle of the hall, and everyone got involved for the entire 24 hours. So
crazy, awesome. And before we do that, there, when you moved from school to university, what was did you notice the difference? Because now you were you were the first lockdown people going to university. What is that like for you? Socializing?
I returned home for the lockdown last year, work on a vineyard and work vintage. So yeah, it was interesting. I think those that stayed formed quite a tight bond with each other, because you're in your hall, you're not necessarily allowed to leave. But I was happy I went home, to be fair. Again, my social battery gets quite drained. So it was good to go home, good to chill out with the family, and go from there. But I think one of those things is people underestimate how draining, if you're not used to it, or to the extent that other people are, how draining it is to, socialize the entire time. And being in your first year at university is, of course, you would have seen it, but people just become so, just not glum. What's the word? Just drained. from trying to be everywhere all at once. And I think, was it the principal of my hall in first year just said, be where your feet are. And I didn't really get that until the end of term 3. So what's that? September,
yeah.
And that's where it really stuck, and that's sort of how I've matured over my year. But you've got to go through that to realize actually this is how I need to cope with stuff. So
yeah, and I love this because that's been a commentary from a lot of our guests on here, saying that when you get to university, wherever the universities around the world, you have this expectation, perception that you have to be there for everybody and do everything.
Exactly.
You have to go out every night, and
yeah.
and it's only in term 3 or term 4 that you go, actually, I can't do this. I am just, and then, you have the additional stress of your exams and your assignments. And most of the time, those are things that go to the wayside because you're trying to maintain the social persona, whatever it is. So
Exactly.
it is a hard thing, and like you said, you have to go through it. But sometimes I wish there's another way we could show people that, hey, it's okay to just say no. I just want to stay at home tonight and just read or just watch TV, and I just do nothing. Which is hard though as a 17, 18-year-old, right? Because we have these build-ups here. So you have that realization, and how is that like? Did that change your world? So term 3, you've got term 4 to go. Where you're like, actually, this is totally different.
I think I can go 0 to 100 quite quick, and of course 100 to 0 quite quick and just drop. So I think that delayed, prolonged, I want to say, that change made me a lot more stable in terms of social and, say, academic and sporting as well. So I think that sort of realization was quite beneficial.
Oh, awesome. And then when did you get involved with the lads? That whole
So I'll go into that. That was after the success of the BYC Marathon. I was approached to be the president of Lads Without Labels. So Lads Without Labels was founded in end of 2019. So it's been going for about 3 years, and it's a men's mental health charity at the University of Canterbury, and not just, of course, men's mental health, but inadvertently, when you help one peer group, you're obviously helping another. So that sort of snowballed from there, and starting this year, president of Lads was just an eye-opening experience. So the University of Canterbury has it has the best club culture in New Zealand, full stop. There's over, I want to say, 300 clubs, each ranging from 5 members all the way up to 800 members. And sorry, I'm just going to adjust that.
No worries.
And I was lucky enough to be able to lead it, having no club experience, blessing or a curse, I'm not too sure. And with that, we implemented a whole bunch of new sort of programs. So one of those was life skill for lads. So every month, every fortnight, we'd run I need to leave with the team, to be fair. So there's 18 of us. So it's a 4-student by student charity, and all student run. So we've got from treasurer to brand strategist to marketing manager to content creator. It's nuts. So we started life skills for lads. So obviously from sewing to gardening to financial management, anything like that. Of course, not just limited to lads. Flat chats, which we talked about before. So going on with a big meal. Ugly Boys Running Club is another one. So there's 60 to 70 odd blokes in that. They get a training program, gym sessions, kit on their back, shoes on their feet, and by the end of it, they can run a marathon. So they recently went down to the Queensland Marathon, which is awesome. I have flat chats, life skills. And then we are starting up a counselling program, also similar to I'm Hopes, but it's for Canterbury University students who are on the wait list, say at the health centre, and those costs are all covered by lads. So
brilliant.
Sort of outsourcing that. I've definitely forgotten some. We've got Running 72. So we turn the central lawn of the UC campus into this wellbeing R&V, which is just such a cool experience. And while that's on for 72 hours, we have people running around campus on a 1.76 kilometre loop. So we've got people running 100Ks, 50Ks, 40Ks, ultras, half ultras, marathons, half marathons, 10Ks. And we ran from here to Turkey, or this is collectively, or another way of looking at that is we ran through the Earth and out the other side until we reached the International Space Station.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that's sort of, and of course we've got all these amazing brands that are behind us as well. Arepa, Triumph and Disaster, Barker's, BDO. I've definitely forgotten some. New Balance, but yeah. And it's a great journey to be on.
Oh, awesome. I guess that's fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah,
My
it is a
question
lot.
for you is,
Sorry, I just dumped it all on you.
oh, no, I can just dump away. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the main question is, what is it like for the young men to actually come? Because, we have all these cool things here, and, there's a saying, you build it, they'll come. And did they come, and were they open to the conversations? Or what is it like initially when you first start?
So we ran one life skills, which was car maintenance. I'm not that much of a handyman myself, but one of the lads thankfully was. So he parked his Hilux in the middle of campus, and changing a tire, oil change, just it could be even your wiper fluid, just stuff like that all around your car. And like probably Otago and all other unis, we've got a confessions page or whatever on Facebook. So there was a couple after that, and it was, hey, thanks lads. I didn't have a dad to teach me that, so it was really cool, being able to learn how to check my oil. So I think even if it's just one person that comes through, it's a success.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And I think that what's really cool about this is because it's not about, there's no judgment. You just come along, you do your thing, whatever it is, and I guess there's no commitment. They can come, they can go. There's no, hey, I didn't see you last week. That's really all right. Cool. So George, you were talking about funding. So we spoke about all the amazing sponsors that you mentioned. How did it all start off for you? Because it's always hard to get things off the ground initially.
Yes. So we had this year we had an amazing partnerships manager who's just an absolute whirlwind, and with that, majority of our funding comes from Running 72. So that's running consecutively around UC. That's our main fundraiser. And the other side of that is we have quite a low-key auction, and those are our two main fundraisers to draw in cash. And those funds go towards our counselling service. On the other hand, you've got Flat Chats, which is sponsored by BDO, who put together, say, a couple grand, and that goes towards funding the training and the food of the program. In terms of those sponsorships that are Koha or in kind, Arepa, so they gave us, I want to say, 2,000 bottles of their drink, which is just awesome because there's no caffeine in it. For Running 72, and we blew through it. So I think balancing between that financial sponsorship and of course, in kind is really important.
Yeah, and it's really awesome to get them on board, and I guess it's because it's a fine line, like you said. It's also a fine line to go, hey, this is what we offer, and the skills that these young people are taking away with them is priceless, right? It's priceless. And what is there any one story that just stands out for you in your time so far that you go, hey, like you said before, even one person is amazing, but is there any story that goes, I'm so glad that we're doing this, or this is an amazing project, and I hope it just carries on?
Cool.
And it's a tough question because every person's amazing, but sometimes there's one person that you go, man, this is.
I honestly can't say there's one.
Perfect.
But I'd say, in terms of, yes, you've got the people we impact, but I'd say I see more of a personal growth in the 18-member exec, because you're with them for the entire year and you see them grow. And I think in terms of going back to your sponsorship piece and your partnerships, those businesses and stuff being able to provide this experience to students and let them cut their teeth. So I think that's really special as well, being able to do that in a safe environment when you're not, what's the word? You're not fully impacting someone, but you're doing it in a safe environment where, hey, actually, if you make a mistake, you go, hey, made a mistake, sorry about that, we can continue, this is what we can do from that. So I think my role next year at LADS is sort of exec education. So of course your mental health first aid, your team bonding, that type of thing. So sort of a HR and also protecting our back in terms of funding and of course new guidelines coming out from the ministry.
Yeah, awesome. Tanya, I'm going to bring you in because you're involved in Silverline as well. So, it's amazing that the universities have this. So, Tanya, you're
Silverline's so cool, by the way.
Yeah.
Love Silverline.
Yeah, they're a pretty cool crew, aren't they?
Tanya,
you're...
I was going to say, I definitely think, there needs more expansion around it. Silverline create an awesome festival and an awesome place to go and delve into these things. And I think that probably allowed me to reflect on those experiences I had during intermediate and early into high school. I think I'd gone through all of that, but then I'd kind of not put it to the side, but I kind of just hadn't spent the time to actually dive down into how it had affected me and what it meant to me. And so going to a place like Silverline where everybody was so vulnerable and willing to open up about those conversations, it didn't necessarily mean that I myself had to, open up and say everything and every, heartfelt moment that I had during the session. But it just made me reflect on, there are people that have been through similar situations, and again allowed me to reflect and go, okay, this is how I do actually feel about this situation. And finding skills along the way as well in terms of, how can I help myself? And, if this does arise again, and it's not necessarily knowing everything or being educated to deal with everything, because there's going to be scenarios you can't deal with, but being able to, have some tools there that go, okay, how can I look after those mates, look after the people around me that I need to, but also be able to look after myself. And I think that's sometimes something we often forget is, we want to be there for our mates. We want to be there for someone who's around me, but I have to be mentally able to go into that space and provide. And I think that's something we often forget.
100%.
Yeah, totally. That's so true, because there's an assumption that everybody's going to be able to deal with whatever the situation is, when that's not actually true. And similar to what Canterbury does, I really love what Silverline's done with It's Not Awkward Bro, because as we said, it's young males, and actually not young, it's males generally that don't want to have this conversation. Whether you're a 16-year-old or a 45-year-old or a 50-year-old, it's that conversation. The one thing that today we were speaking about as well was, think about the farming community. You have farmers that are so ingrained in the culture that speaking about things not being okay is a hard conversation. So when you're 45 or 50, who do you turn to? And it's just, how do you just normalize that conversation? Not even normalize, just say, hey, it's okay to just say I'm having a shitty day or a bad day.
Exactly. Which
is tough. So now we're going to come to the exciting part of this conversation. I mean, this is all really, really cool. So let's talk about your latest caper that you're involved in. Tell us more about the big one. Let's talk about the big one.
Yeah. So the big one sort of only came about recently, and I was back in the pool. It's recently set up New Zealand's first tertiary swim club, which was awesome. Wow. By the way, so that was the first one we set up, and I was waking up in the morning, alarm was going off, and I wasn't showing up to trainings. So I was like, okay, I need to train for something. And every time I go back and forth from Blenheim to Christchurch, back home, back to uni, you drive up the Kaikoura coast, and you look out and you go, that's a sexy piece of ocean. So, and of course it gets so rough. So tangaroa, changing moods. So looking at that, I was like, hey, you can give it a crack, you can give it a good try. So that's sort of where the idea of swimming from Christchurch to Blenheim arose. So it's a 300-kilometre sea swim along the coast, starting at New Brighton Pier on the 28th of January. And I've got 15 to 20 days to do it. So it'll be 20k a day, hopefully. Hopefully there's a big enough weather window. And we're trying to raise $100,000 for Iron Hope.
Oh, brilliant. So
Mm.
now let's similar conversation. So you have this. I mean, I've driven down that coastline
Yeah.
many times, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's amazingly flat and it's beautiful, and other times you see seals that are being flung up on
Yeah.
the road, and it's just crazy.
It's,
It's the crazy piece of. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just stunning whichever way we drive. When you thought about this, and you mentioned this to, I guess, your peer group and your family, that hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Was the reaction, okay, cool, George has done this kind of stuff before, or was it, hey, wait a minute, this is a different coastline altogether?
this is a whole different kettle of fish. This
Yeah.
is nuts.
Yeah.
And in terms of compared to training last time, I was training, but I wasn't getting my body as prepared. So at the moment, I've put on 10 kilo. So for the last one, I didn't really mess around with sort of what my body composition was. So at the moment, I'm sitting at 100, which is the most I've ever weighed. I usually sit about around 85 type thing. So putting that amount of weight on just for this, and I'm not running at the moment. It's swimming and gymming, and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a whole different kettle of fish in terms of and it's in 67 days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, not that we're counting, And tell us about
I am.
exactly. Yeah. And tell us about the name Black Dog Swim. What inspired that?
Yeah, so Black Dog Swim was the original one in the Marlborough Sounds as well. So we have a black lab as a family dog, she's so cute. Her name's Baloo, but then we have a cat called Blue, so it doesn't really make sense. But Black Dog comes from Winston Churchill being misquoted as Black Dog representing depression. Sorry if you can hear the sirens, the food bank's on at the moment, so I'm not being pursued. So yeah, it comes from Winston Churchill, who was misquoted about the black dog representing depression, and it sort of just flowed from there. And I thought it looked quite cool, dog sticking its head up from above the water and paddling. So yeah, that's sort of where it stemmed from.
It's a very cool logo. And now this is a whole different ballgame, not just physically and mentally and emotionally, but also in terms of the funding, to sponsorship for this. How have you reached out in this space here? Because it's a whole different kettle of fish.
Yeah, so I think I've been incredibly lucky in terms of getting the physical support behind, in terms of making it actually run. So with that, Johnny Reader, who runs all the crayfish quotas down the coast, has gone, hey, I've got a boat, I'll skipper it, let's have a good time. So that entire part of the swim's all sorted. The other half of it is, of course, your media, your publicity, and sort of dealing with that, which is quite a big stressor when you've got to be training as well. So, of course, this is where Molly, the manager, comes in and helps me out a bit with that. So, and of course, $100,000 for it. I'm hoping we've only in the past we've raised 64, and I think that coming from the majority from the Marlborough community, we need to make it a bit more nationwide and improve that outreach.
Yeah, and I think hopefully people listen to this podcast and go, "Hey, this is really cool," and because it's not just a Marlborough thing. It's a countrywide / universal thing, and what you're doing is pretty epic. This is just you by yourself, just you swimming, or you going to tag, or you?
Yeah.
No kayakers, no.
Oh, there'll be kayakers and stuff depending on the weather, but the main health and safety issue is two things. Me getting on and off the boat into the water. Getting into the water is easy. It's getting back on. And then you've also got I was talking to a Niwa shark scientist the other day, and you've got the Kaikoura Trench, which runs all the way up to the Kumadex, and you can fit the Burj Khalifa in there 1.5 times or something like that. It's nuts. So swimming over that, I will be, bricking my pants to be quite frank, in my wetsuit. So managing that in terms of mentals, but also safety, sharks and sea life and stuff.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, is the Kaikoura coastline is basically the most diverse sea life, I think, in New Zealand. It's got amazing. It's full of whales and sperm whales and tons of sea life. So when George is talking about that, it's not just talking about the element; it's nature. Nature is going to be there doing its thing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, that's we'll be watching you from afar.
So
That's really
the current also runs north at about 3 knots, depending on tidal flows as well. So I've got help, which is good.
Yep. Question. Initially, you were gonna go the other way.
Yes.
You're gonna
Yeah.
And you switched.
So that was one, marketing. Swimming to uni sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And two, the northwest is the prevailing wind at that time of year.
Yeah.
However, looking at it, the current wasn't going to play ball.
Yeah.
It was sitting. I thought it was almost sitting perpendicular to me, but it's actually off my left shoulder. If I was to head south, so we've got to head north, and just cross our fingers and toes.
Exactly, yeah, and everything else. Exactly. I also noticed that you were eating a lot of Pic's peanut butter. Is that are they one of your big sponsors?
Awesome. So good. So they're sending me the big tubs, 2.5 kilos, and I'm going through about one every 2.5 weeks.
Oh wow, yep. Why not, right?
Awesome. It is awesome. So it's that 100 grams a day ish, I think. No.
Yeah.
A bit more. Yeah.
But it tastes good, it does the job. Why not?
It does the job, put it in smoothies and
brilliant. Oh, brilliant. And also, so you've got this happening, but also you are navigating your academic life as well. So there's your university carrying on. What's that like for you, in terms of the university support, I guess, for you?
I've made some really good connections within the university through lads.
Yes.
In terms of the staff there, which is really, really cool. So the support from the university in terms of the swim, they've set me up in their sort of athlete program, and you get all the support through there, which is cool. In terms of academics, I'm a regular uni student. Apart from the fact that my time is a bit more stressed, of course, if I wasn't doing all this, my grades would probably be a lot better. But we charge ahead, and I'm passing everything, so I can't complain.
Exactly.
And that's sort of where my mind sits with academics. I think I place a lot more importance on other things.
Yeah, totally. And I guess it's also context, for you,
Exactly.
Academics are okay, cool. That's part of you. You're learning the stuff there. It doesn't matter if you get an A or a B. Your actual impact out there it doesn't matter if you get an A or a B. The person that you helped doesn't actually care.
Yeah, exactly. So, and what I am studying relates to what I want to go into as well. Whether or not I'm smart enough for clinical, or I go into IO and work my way into a sports site.
Yeah, awesome. And what is your own mental health journey been like? Because the stuff that you're going through is also mentally taxing for you as a young person. How has it been for you?
Being home is my rock. I love being home with everyone. Busy family, so it makes me feel quite energized. In terms of, I think, again, going back like year 12, I think I definitely lost my way a wee bit in this, and that swim sort of gave me something to focus on, and I'd say that's the same for this one. Sort of start of the year going into flatting, and also thinking about it last year as well, going, okay, I need a project, I need something to focus on that isn't university, and not to be different, but just have something that's mine, and that's mine alone, that I can sort of own, and I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to touch on something you mentioned there. The shift from whole life to flat life. What is that like? Because that's a whole different ballgame altogether. I always think when you go from school to university, whole life we have that buffer. There's people out there looking out for you all the time, really essentially. Then you're going to a flatting situation. What is that like for you?
Yeah, I think flatting I really enjoyed. I enjoyed flatting more than halls, to be fair. And that's nothing against my hall at all, but I think, there's something about getting into a routine when you're flatting, because it's so easy to let yourself go. And I don't think a lot of students put that much, stress on that, in terms of, getting up early, sorting themselves out, You know, going for a beer down at the pub later on, perfect, and getting yourself into that type of routine. So, yeah, and I think with that sort of just stabilizes your mental health.
Yeah. And it's really hard because there's no one there to tell you how and what's right and what's
Exactly.
wrong, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you figure it out, sometimes you don't figure it out, and you
Mm.
know that's when your counseling or your extra help comes into play.
100%. And I think knowing why you're getting yourself into a routine is beneficial, but also at the same time you know why you're doing it, and it's almost off-putting. It's almost like a double think type of way. You know why you want to do it, but you're like, and you get a bit angsty about it. So, yeah, I think managing that's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, interesting, because that's what Tony spoke about at the start. You know, his really atomic habits and the running versus the gym. You know, that's something that you are navigating in the reading, right, Tony?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a hard balance to get, and I think that's where, you know, it's nice to have an end goal, but it's also nice to just focus on the day in and day out. And I think that's probably what I don't focus on enough. You know, I go to the gym and I'm like, okay, cool, you know, and that's all good and well, but I always have this end goal of like, okay, this is for rugby, or this is, you know, for the next season of what I want to get to, instead of finishing the session and just going, oh, that was good, you know, I've just been there, I've done that, and I'm happy with that, which takes a bit of adjustment, but I'm sure it will be a good adjustment once I can do it.
Yeah.
100%.
And it takes time. It's awareness, you know, like, you know, the saying, awareness precedes change. If you're not aware, nothing's going to change. So, and it does take time, because we're all conditioned to say, hey, we have to do this. And like you said, George, you know, when you go towards something, and if you're not, let's just say you're training for a rugby game and you don't train that day, you feel bad, or you feel guilty. There's that whole guilty of, oh, I didn't do it, oh, this is not okay. And then that whole spiral just happens, which is crazy. George,
of course, also
also
the other way, and going, hey, I'm going to have a rest day, and then you also feel guilty.
Yeah, totally. And it's also the perception of society that you have to keep being active all the time. You know, I have to get 10,000 steps a day. If I don't get those, oh, what have I done? Oh, you know, just that whole perception, which is crazy, quite crazy. And which again then affects your mental health, affects everything, because that whole spiraling thing just happens. Before we end up, what about your interactions with Mike King? How's that been for you? Because obviously he's a huge champion here in New Zealand for the mental health services and what we do in that space. What has that been like for you as a young person, getting involved in this really huge, massive countrywide push, I guess?
To be honest, at the start, I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's fine. Not my generation. And I think that's definitely helped in my relationship with him as well, because it's not this big person, it's just a bloke who's really motivated, and I think that's what it boils down to. And it's just the fact he's doing it in the public sphere as well. And you know, as most people have probably seen that video that was on the Rock, it's not, you know, all this marketing isn't meant to make you feel, you know, rainbows and butterflies. It's meant to, you know, get you up and angry and emotional over what needs to happen and what change needs to be done. So personally for me, I think getting involved with this I was definitely put into perspective, and sort of humbled me quite a bit in what's the word? Gratitude. So it's made me incredibly, for what I have personally, and then those around me and where I am. So,
Yes, perspective is pretty amazing, right? Perspective just brings gratitude in so many different ways. I love how you said you had no idea who Mike King was. I had no idea as well. I mean, I grew up in Zimbabwe. They're like, Mike King. I was like, oh, what the hell's Mike King? Whatever. It's not about the person; it's about the cause. Like,
exactly.
what is the cause all about? You know, because you go, right, cool. When Mike King passes on, will the cause still live on? That's the more important thing. It shouldn't be linked to a person. It should be, all right, cool. This is
exactly
to live
beef
on.
vendetta or something.
Totally, exactly.
Like that.
100%. I mean, this is so powerful. George, we've been speaking for almost an hour and 10 minutes or so. We can keep talking forever and ever and ever. But I just want to ask you some other questions. I was just around the stuff that you're doing with the lads, you know, lads without labels. Is that one of your real, because you spoke about it and the passion comes through really, really strongly. Is that something that you realize actually this is a really easy thing to do that just has a conversation flowing? Because it's very simple, isn't it?
I think. Oh look, and we all of us say that are in the committee, exec, whatever you want to call it. If we could be paid for it, we'd do it for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So if there's someone listening that wants to do that, that'd be awesome. Thanks, cheers very much. But at the same time, it's, as we said before, the idea of it, the passion still continues, and that's one thing I'm quite aware of in terms of that organisation, because at the moment we've got a really motivated key group of people, but it's the succession of that and bringing it on. So I think me looking towards the future, that's for next year, that's one of my main focuses for that organisation. That's, shoulder tapping people, and just I love people watching, by the way, but people watching going, hey, who's showing up, who's motivated, who wants to give back to this cause and continue it on.
Yeah, and I think it's important, because when you're married to an idea and then you move on, it's very hard to say, okay, cool, just give it away.
Yeah.
And we see it happening a lot of times. People just it's their identity, but it's actually not them.
Yeah,
it reminds me about have you ever watched the video about the dancing man at the so there's a gig happening and this guy just starts dancing crazily.
Yeah, and then the second one comes, and then the third one comes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And I think this reminds me of any cause, if that guy just sat down, that's it, there would have been no dance party.
Yeah.
So you started the dance, or someone started the dance, someone's going to take that over, and it's just going to grow and grow and grow.
100%.
Which I think is the main thing. Succession planning is key for any organization. George, our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and to round off this podcast here, we'd love to ask our guests: is there any one piece of knowledge from your lived experience or from your experiences that you'd like to share with our listeners that they could put into their basket of knowledge?
Oh, what did we talk about before? I think hindsight's a curse.
Yeah,
it's a curse disguised as a blessing. So don't get too hung up on it.
Yeah,
so that's my short and sharp piece for you.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight is a curse, and I think a lot of us live in that. What ifs, the what ifs, or we should have.
Exactly.
Should have. Yep. What if this happens, or we should do this here? It's definitely a curse. I think that's nice and simple, and it's applicable to anything in life.
Yep.
Anything in life, from relationships to purchases to anything. Great. Tanya, any last words from you to George?
No, I think it's just been great to open up the conversation, and I guess that's something I need to touch on going forward is reaching out to my mates and just catching up with them, seeing how they're actually going, because I think especially my mates back home, I don't get to see them a lot, and when I do, we have these really good and deep and meaningful conversations. But then it chips away as soon as I come back down to uni and start getting stuck in my other causes. So it's about trying to reconnect it, and it's not necessarily again having those massive conversations all the time, but just saying I'm here, seeing how they're doing, and actually just being there for them. So that's something I need to actively go out and do as I move forward.
Yeah. Do you find you have better conversations, like when you go back home to Taranaki? Do you find you have better conversations with your high school mates in terms of depth compared to uni mates?
I definitely do find that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because I've spent more time with them, and I think we touched on it in the previous podcast, when you come to uni, it's go, and you never really have much time to actually just stop and be in the present and talk about the same struggles that we have at uni. And I guess, when I go back home, we've got all these, we've got such a strong relationship that I can just open up just
100%.
about pretty much anything. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. So interesting.
It's crazy, right? Because I think at university, everyone has a mask. Everyone has this mask that they have to put on. When you go back home, you're just real.
Yeah.
You just it's crazy, because when I go back home to Zimbabwe, it's the same thing. I haven't seen my friends for maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, but the conversations are really detailed. And whereas it's a bit different for me, but here you just have a superficial conversation because you're worried about other things. Yeah.
You're not where your feet are.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, I think that's really a great learning. You're not where your feet are. Stay where your feet are. That's fantastic. Yeah. George, I also want you to don't be shy here. If people want to get in touch with you or to sponsor you or to help you along, feel free to just tell them how to do that.
Black Dog Swim on Instagram, Facebook, not on LinkedIn or Strava. Sorry, your two most important forms of social media, and of course, give a little Black Dog Swim. And make sure to follow on Instagram and Facebook. So,
Yeah, please, to listeners, listen out there. Even if you can donate $1, it makes a big difference. Anything for George and his crew would be amazing. George, thank you so much. This has been a really fascinating chat for me. Your causes are amazing. They've inspired me. Just listening to your reason, your why has been really fascinating. And just the smallest conversation can change a person's life. So thank you so much for your time today. Tane, any last words from you to George?
Again, just thank you for coming on the podcast and being open and honest about your whole journey.
no stress.
Yeah, so listeners out there, thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully you've learned a little bit today. And if you haven't, like I always say, listen to the podcast again, because I'm sure you'll find something. And for this podcast here, I'm also going to push and say, hey, if you have a bit of spare change lying around, jump onto George's Instagram, Facebook, give it a little page, and feel free to drop some coin to help him towards this amazing cause. I mean, his last fundraising, it basically gave 533 people or 533 counseling sessions to people that might not be able to afford it. So fantastic. Till next time, thank you very much, and keep safe and keep putting some stuff into your basket knowledge. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.